the Spot Track Podcast, talking sports contracts, the salary cap, and business of sports.
Welcome into the latest edition of the Spot Track Podcast. Brandon Kravitz here, along with the money man himself, Mike Ginnitti. Now that the draft is behind us, UDFA's wrapping up. What is the focus these days over at Spot Track? What takes tier one?
A lot of these NBA teams, as they get eliminated, we turn right into off-season mode with them, and it's a fun conversation because you're dealing with, generally speaking, negative cap space. So you're projecting trades and trying to package together blockbuster situations with a bunch of teams, and it's just not like any other sport. There's not. I don't do that with the NFL when when the Bengals get eliminated. I don't try to find 7 players that need to get traded off the roster in order to change who they're going to be for the next season. But that's how the NBA operates. So I'm going over to the Lakers and the Heat and to some degree the Suns to try to understand what that big move is going to be, because that's how superstars move in this league.
Well, let's start there then. Some of these teams that have been eliminated, and it's probably like this every year, but this year it seems like we have a couple of teams that make for really interesting headlines for that exact conversation that you're talking about. Which of these teams, we can talk about all of them, but which is the most likely of these three to make wholesale changes? Lakers, Suns, Heat.
Boy, I just don't know that the Lakers have the ability to do it if they want to bring LeBron back. You know what I mean? So I'm gonna say they make minor moves, but not the moves we all kind of think they're gonna make. And I do believe the Heat will make a move. Whether that gets up to the level of a Tyler Hero, we'll see. But they're negative. They're not a cap space team where they can just go and kind of operate with a big swing. So I'm going back to the Suns. I think I said this on Monday's pod. To me, one of Devin Booker or Kevin Durant is traded this offseason. I truly believe that, and I know that goes against everything the owner's saying right now. They're going to look around the room and they're going to have conversations with that front office and get to a point where they're at a standstill. And once that happens and once that leaks out inside that locker room, Kevin Durant's going to go up there and say, "What the hell is happening? Because if it's nothing, get me out of here." So I do think that's the team with the biggest move this offseason, but there's going to be at least small to mid-level moves for all three of them.
The Bradley Beal contract has to be, it could be the worst contract in the NBA, but I also just Googled Ben Simmons just to make sure, see where we're at.
How about the 3-year Kawhi extension, which is still sitting out there? What I still don't understand it, but that's in the conversation for sure, Brandon.
In the conversation, but at least I could sell you on Kawhi being good enough as the reason that you're in the playoffs as a top level seed. He doesn't play anymore in the playoffs, but he'll get you there. What's Bradley Beal doing? He's just occupying space on the court for $50 million.
Yeah, that's a tough. 2 years, $104 million. That's a tough pill to swallow. And they're going to have to swallow it because we say nothing's untradeable in the NBA. I believe that's an untradeable contract. So this time next year with 1 year left on an expiring, different conversation. Actually, I'm sorry. There's a player option in 2026. This is basically a 3-year, $156 million contract. It's untradeable. He is an absolute statue on that roster. So that's what gets me to, in order to cover your butts and at least shake things up a little bit. I think one of those other two pieces is going to move.
And with the Bradley Beal, Kawhi Leonard comparison, the Clippers are moving into a new arena next season. They need star power to sell those premium packages and season tickets. And Kawhi Leonard is the kind of guy, as confusing and confounding as he is, he'll sell tickets. How many Bradley Beal jerseys you really think Phoenix is peddling these days? Let's be honest.
It's an interesting question.
It's a bad business move.
I wish they were still playing so I could start to scan the fans a little bit and answer you.
Where's the Beal jersey at?
Yeah. Where are those at?
A lot of Bookers, a lot of Durants. I would venture to guess that Yusuf Nurkic sells similar jerseys. Bradley Beal really getting raked over the coals here, but I just think that it's worth mentioning that there aren't a lot of really bad contracts in the NBA, and I don't want to just make that declarative statement without asking your opinion on it, but it does feel like this year, up until we got to the playoffs and Kawhi and Jimmy and Zion all weren't playing and Joel Embiid is on the fritz, it felt like it was a mostly healthy year in the NBA. And when you're looking at the top paid players in the league, it doesn't feel like we have as many bad contracts as we usually do in the NBA.
No, you're right. Everybody kind of at least held their own, if not exceeded some expectations to some degree. You certainly had your injuries with the balls and to go down the line here a little bit, but it feels like a healthier season. To me, it's the conversation of tradability, because generally speaking, we let so many of these contracts off the hook because we know that there's going to be at least one team out there willing to take this thing on for one reason or another. We don't usually get to this point where Bradley Beal is, to me, truly frozen in time right now on this contract, because of this contract, and certainly because of his role on this roster. Right? He's not even holding up as a third man in, and that's what he was brought in to be. So we don't get to this point often in the NBA. Generally speaking, there's a bad team willing to take Bradley Beal on as a number one option to roll with it for the next 2 seasons. I don't see it happening. So I'm with you. This is an anomaly and a unicorn in a situation that generally most teams can get themselves out of.
You have the Lakers' practical cap space hovering around a negative $83 million. What can they do to their roster to realistically get better around LeBron next year, outside of drafting his son in the second round?
Arguably. Look, the conversation right now is surrounding D'Angelo Russell, and I get it. He's got that $18.5 million player option. He, I think, exceeded some expectations, mine at least, this year. He sort of reverted back into that Brooklyn mode a little bit, where you could see some flashes of him, certainly offensively speaking, at least taking over the number 3 option, offensively speaking, on a roster. There's conversation about the Lakers flipping him along with a bunch of first round picks and getting that big offensive piece that LeBron and Anthony Davis appear to need. I don't know why D'Angelo Russell would allow that to happen, right? Why would he accept the 1 year, $18 million contract? I think he's worth more. I think he can get a multi-year guarantee somewhere. And B, all he has to do is opt out of that. And he's a free agent. And yes, there's rights that belong to the Lakers, but he now has a say in where he goes. And to me, that control is important. So I'm going to focus less on who's coming in and more on what the Lakers' options might actually be. And I don't think Russell being a trade piece is an option, because if I'm his agent, I'm not allowing that to happen with Rob Pelinka this offseason. So do we get to Austin Reeves then? Maybe, but that's only $13 million. His salary is $13 million. And in a trade matching league, that's not going to bring you back a superstar. So yeah, are they going to have to package some of this depth together, like a Vanderbilt and a Reeves and a Hachimura, just to get to a max contract? If that's what we're talking about with the big 3 in LA again, maybe. But boy, I'd be hard pressed to deplete depth with Anthony Davis and his injury history, and LeBron James about to turn 40 years old. So I don't love too many of these options. I do think this is going to be another year where they just use an exception, try to get somebody to take a pay cut and come and join this team for LeBron's final 2-year run. But to say they're going to take a swing and package a bunch of first round picks and actually make this thing work for the next 2 seasons, that's easier said than done, way easier said than done right now.
And this is the situation that LeBron has put himself in. He went to, I think we could confidently say, the wrong place, and they were able to win a championship because he's so great, because Anthony Davis put together a healthy, productive season. And he's been a lot better, but the roster that he joined from the beginning, I mean, it feels like they've been playing catch up since he got there because of the way that they were constructed with it. It feels like it was ages ago. Brandon Ingram and Lonzo Ball and guys like that. And they got Anthony Davis, but it does feel like the rest of the roster, they've been trying to just piece this together sort of haphazardly ever since.
Yeah, and that's the struggle you have when your top 2 players make $50 million a year, and that's just the going rate. And then certainly with the CBA change, I think a lot of people's plans had to alter slightly because of this double apron system and the clampdown they put on these top tax teams. Just quickly talking about that, the Lakers are slightly over the first apron, and they got about $10 million of space on that second apron. So if you follow the tax stuff closely, They're somewhat healthy. And by the way, LeBron extending to that max contract and dropping his salary a couple of million would actually take them under the first apron. So there's some benefits to things happening, sort of how we've laid it out here. But to say that there's sweeping changes coming to this roster, I'm going to have to see it before I believe it, because quite frankly, this wasn't a bad team. This wasn't a terrible team. Yeah, they stumbled at times and got themselves into a play-in situation. But I don't want to overreact to this Denver series, because I think there's 15 other teams in the Western Conference that would have gotten blown out of that series by that Denver team. And that's just how things are going to have to work for a few years here.
Yeah, I know we all kind of laughed at it at the time, the idea of tanking in a play-in game so that you could get the Oklahoma City Thunder, but it doesn't seem like such a bad idea now that we made it 5 games into that series.
I don't know. You want LeBron to have a longer summer to heal up, maybe? I don't know. Is there some silver lining we can bring away from this?
I don't know, but I guess that's a conversation for a sports medical analyst. I don't know what would help LeBron more at this point, is having more time to recover or not having to put an entire team on his back at the age of 39.
Yeah.
Which one of those is actually more taxing? Ramona Shelburne of ESPN is reporting that the Sixers and my Orlando Magic will be in the running for Paul George in the summer. Can you see him leaving in LA, and does either one of those teams make sense to you?
They both make a phenomenal sense, especially Orlando, where Paul George could truly be a superstar player again. He's sort of a second trick pony right now. And understandably, I just don't think that's in his personality. I really don't. I know him leaving OKC was kind of awkward, and we got to a point where, my God, the Clippers gave up the world to get him. We've already discussed, right, this new stadium, the owner who is unbelievably aggressive in marketing and bolstering, the situation that he has. Why would he give up Paul George right now, who, for all intents and purposes, had one of his better seasons and is having one of his better playoffs right now too? So I don't know why the Clippers would do this. Now, would Paul George go up to that front office and say, it's time, we got to shake things up a little bit? That doesn't seem like his personality to me, right? A lot of superstars, I'd say absolutely. I don't read it that way with Paul George.
What's his contract situation look like?
Yeah, there's a few years left here. It's sort of at the finish line. I believe I'm trying to look quickly here. I believe there's 3 years left on that George contract. Oh, excuse me. It is just a 1-year player option. I thought there was an extension built into this. It's a 1 year. So he's an expiring. So it's either he's going to extend, or I guess there is a world where the Clippers start to at least look what's out there. So it's 1 for 48, massive extension probably in his future. He's only 34, just turned 34 years old. So I guess when we're talking contractually speaking, Brandon, I could get myself to a point where there's at least a come to Jesus moment with this front office. But again, Ballmer's just going to pay, and at that point
especially
in time,
now.
Yeah, at that point in time, I don't know why George would ever say otherwise.
So is it wild to think, I'm going to throw a crazy one at you. We like to do this every once in a while on the podcast. If the 76ers get bounced against the Knicks tonight or in game 7, they don't make it out of round 1, Joel Embiid, another year of disappointing playoff performance. He's 30 years old. He's missed 43 games this season. He's never even come close to 82 in his career. And there's no reason to think that a big man who is now past 30 years old, who has had injury issues since he came into the league, will all of a sudden find the fountain of health. 3 years left on this deal.
Yeah.
And the Sixers have a guy that they can look at and say, we might have a superstar not named Joel Embiid with the way Tyrese Maxey is playing. Do you think there's a real conversation in the 76ers front office when the season ends that, hey, we might want to get off this Embiid train?
There has to be. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen on Daryl Morey's watch. Let me put it that way. Now, if they lose to the Knicks, does Daryl Morey still have a job there? Probably not. All right. There's been enough ruffled feathers over the past couple of seasons with Harden and all this mess. I think to get to a point where they're going to change the front office in Philly, that's step one. Now, a year from now with that new front office, if we're still in this conversation where Embiid is a 60% player, which that's what he's been for his career, I guess you have to start considering it. But then at that point, are you even going to get anything back worth it, right? Or should you just ride this thing out until he's an expiring contract and flip him at the deadline or something like that? Look, this is this is a conversation worth having with teams this offseason, right? Couldn't you pair him with like an Evan Mobley in Cleveland and pull one of those superstar players, Jared Allen or Donovan Mitchell, off of that roster? And would that benefit both sides a little bit, where Embiid isn't having to play 40 minutes a game for that roster because there's some coverage in terms of big men? Maybe, but I don't know. I don't think we're there this offseason, but it is certainly, it's not hyperbole to be having the conversation, because this is just attached to his career now forever. And by the way, and we're going to talk about it in a second, Mike Trout's in the same conversation, superstar player. This is now a part of his resume. It's not just a one-off or a two-off or a three-off. It's an annual thing. So it's unfortunate, but yeah, of course you're for a front office. This is happening. This is a fluid conversation that you're having.
Yeah, and the goofy thing about it is that nobody is sitting here and questioning the ability of Joel Embiid.
He's a freak.
He's a legitimate MVP. The guy looks like he's been in a cage fight the last couple of games, and yet he's still putting up triple doubles. He's incredible. I was thinking about Miami, because Miami always enters the conversation of off-season noise. There's no doubt that Joel Embiid is a better player than Bam Adebayo. I wonder if you could get a deal. I don't know what the Jimmy Butler-Embiid relationship is like, so that would be a factor. But I wonder if Miami would look and go, hey, we made it as far as we can go with this roster. Let's see what else we can do. And I think if you're the Sixers, you go, if we're going to move off of Embiid, you can do a lot worse than Bam. That was one of the ideas, that Bam and draft picks or however else you had to make it work.
Yeah, that works. I would just be hesitant to make him the only big man option on a roster, So if you're giving up Bam, you're right back in the same boat where you're relying on him to be a 40-minute center or 40-minute power forward, however you're going to handle him. I don't think that's smart business by any regard if that's how you're going to roll out your roster. So, you want to tell me you're flipping Embiid to Miami for a bunch of their guards? Now we're talking. Now you're building out of the backcourt in Philadelphia, which is something I think they should be smart with, because Maxey is a true superstar. But I just don't see it. I don't see Pat Riley, having a different view of this than we're having right now, which is that's the guy that we should be hitching our wagon to for the next 3 seasons.
Let's move over to the NFL. I got some Chiefs questions for you, and then we'll wrap with our quick hits on today's episode. Travis Kelce signed an extension, or a perceived extension, with the Kansas City Chiefs. But what's the reality of this deal? You did some digging.
Yeah, we finally got it. I got to look at it this morning. It's a 1-year, $17 million contract. Let's be perfectly frank about what this is, which is good. That's more cash in his hand. It actually increased his salary cap number by $4.5 million. So it wasn't exactly a cost-saving mechanism in either regard for the Kansas City Chiefs. This was simply, this guy's a dude. This guy is selling merchandise left and right because of his current situation outside of football. Everything about this thing is profitable for us. Let's make sure he's 100% happy, doesn't even consider retiring this summer while he's sitting home enjoying his other life. It's good business. So am I here to say that he's here for 2 years? No. Okay. This is a 1-year, $17 million contract. He has the ability to make another $17.5 million next year, and that vests early next March, which puts the onus on Kelce. So we're going to get a year out of you. We're going to get a decision out of you by the time the league year in 2025 starts. And if you're going to walk away from us, then we're going to pull the trigger at that point in time. So just good business. They did this with Mahomes when they didn't have to in the middle of his gigantic contract. They've now done it with Kelce, and it's kind of easy to do this when you're winning Super Bowl and printing cash from a merchandise and ticket standpoint like they're doing in Kansas City right now.
It seems like Kansas City is willing to take care of their guys, but they are very, very selective of who those guys are.
That's right. Some guys have to walk away, and that's part of it, right? They are operating a dynasty as you have to operate it, which is selective. There are very tough decisions with Snead and Tyrann Mathieu and certainly Tyreek Hill, but I do think that
Chris Jones in the contract last year, they went through. It was like, how is that not one of the guys that you just lock up without any questions asked?
Well, to be honest, they saved money last year going that route, and now they've paid them, and they know that that's going to be a 3-year, process. It aligns sort of with Mahomes in the next contract. So once they get off the Chris Jones contract, they're going to redo Mahomes and make sure that the third iteration of his, career at least has some cash savings from the defensive side. there's a hell of a lot of happening in Kansas City right now. Let's put it that way, Brandon. And they're all sort of staggering the cash flow of how this is going to have to work for the next 10 years. It's probably the only team, maybe outside of Philadelphia, because of the 97 option bonuses they have on their books, that are really, really, truly trying to budget like a decade ahead of time because of Mahomes. It's the one player that you can do that with.
I don't know. We might have to get Taylor Swift on the phone because here's the thing. When players sign new deals and you just type that player into Google without even just and then just hit enter, don't worry about what the prompts come up. SpotTrack will be one of the first links that you find because that's what people want, that information. That's why you're listening to this podcast. You have been buried by Taylor Swift. Just type in Travis Kelce and the first 20 searches are about some, I don't know, like PDA or something that they've got. Yeah, I just want you to know she owes you a cut.
Yeah, by the way, the Chiefs know this too, and that's why they gave him a pay raise, because they know at any point in time he could just say, "Yeah, I don't need to do this anymore. My body's killing me. I'm getting the hell out of here." So here's an extra $3 million this year. Let's just make it work. All right.
How does he stack up with the hilarious? How does he stack up with the other? Well, the other tight ends, he's paid better than anybody else. But what about wide receiver? Because that's really what he is. How does he compare to the top level wide receivers in terms of his average annual value?
Yeah, so he's at essentially 17 and change right now. That's Jerry Jeudy. Okay. 22nd overall wide receiver. The wide receiver market has just been ridiculous, and rightfully so. I'm not going to say it's a bad thing, but right, Devontae Smith re-up to 25. I'm on Ross St. Brown over 30. AJ Brown just got 32, and we're not even close to done, right? CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, just to name a few who are going to be above all of these numbers we just referenced. So Calvin Ridley got 23 this year. It's been a strong year for wide receivers in terms of the average pay, and by the way, the guarantee money as well. So no, the tight ends are nowhere near where the receivers are in terms of franchise tags, in terms of overall contracts, but it's just, I guess, just how the way the NFL is doing business. And maybe the next time the CBA comes up, we adjust some things from a franchise tag standpoint to sort of align these things better, but not right now.
Yeah, Travis Kelce will have to benefit in other ways. He'll be fine, but I don't think he'll be able to cash in on that.
Isn't the breakup kind of built into this thing? We'll see.
Oh, man.
I don't know.
You're coming out swinging. You got to be careful with that stuff, Mike. I don't want you taken down by the internet.
This offends.
There's a lot of crossover between SpotTrack listeners and Taylor Swift fans.
I have 3 daughters. All right, I know where this stuff all ends.
There you go. See, exactly. I noticed you brought the vocals down a little bit when you said it. The Chiefs wide receiver Rashee Rice is in all sorts of legal trouble. He's looking at a potential half a season type of suspension. So we're talking 8 or 9 games. Do you think they dip their toe in the wide receiver market of the guys that are still out there and available to try and fill that role? Or is that what they did in the draft?
Wow, I didn't even hear that update on Rashee Rice. I kind of assumed
it's a rumor out there that he's going to face half a year.
I assumed it was going to be something fairly significant, but that's something else. Well, look, they obviously dipped their hat in the first round with Worthy. They do still have some other options right now. Kadarius Toney is still in this roster because he's fully guaranteed. We'll see if there's an out plan on that. Yeah, look, I'm still hearing Brandon Ayuk rumors. I don't know if you are as well. I have other teams that I think are landing spots for Ayuk, but I do believe San Francisco is at least still considering flipping him to save some cap and cash in an extension situation there. But outside of that, yeah, why would they do that, right?
It's a different conference, but you realize that's the team you're most likely going to play. It's like Buffalo. I don't understand the Bills giving the Chiefs, here, take the wide receiver you want, and then we'll get the one that's left over. Yeah, that stuff baffles me. Why you would make deals with this team?
Yeah. Look, but look, a first round pick is a first round pick, and that's what San Francisco wants. Nobody's been willing to go there, but if Kansas City goes there, it's essentially a second round pick, right? It's an early second round. Let's be honest. Kansas City, it's not going to be less than 20 something. But if they go there, San Francisco is going to say yes. They just are. So I would say that's a name still out there. I don't think Justin Jefferson's going anywhere. I've heard that quite a bit. I don't believe that's the case. And I've said it to you before. I don't think T. Higgins is going anywhere either. The Bengals want him in 2024, and they will deal with the ramifications thereafter. But outside of Miami floating Jalen Waddle out there, which isn't terribly crazy, in their current climate. I just don't think we have too many more options floating out there. Do they take a flyer on like a Hunter Renfroe who's still available? Sure, maybe. Tyler Boyd's still available. Sure, maybe. So they could add some depth pieces, but I don't think there's going to be a slam dunk replacement for a player like Rice, who was really turning a corner at the end of last season. So to have him miss, 7 to 8 weeks is a huge blow to that team.
Well, I'm sure Mahomes would turn Renfroe into Wes Welker, so that's not the worst thing in the world. Let's get to our quick hits to wrap today's episode. Mike Trout sidelined again, this time a torn meniscus. He's out indefinitely, so we'll see what this timeline looks like moving forward. But he's got to be in that category of most under-optimized talents in the history of sports. What are the Angels looking at here as far as the way this contract is going to wrap up and where they're at in the middle of it?
It's brutal. It's absolutely brutal. There's 7 years, over $248 million left if we're talking about 2024 through the remainder of this contract. It's been 3 straight seasons that he's had some sort of IL stint. This one's going to be a season-ending stint with that knee injury. And you just hate it for baseball. You hate that, this is the equivalent of Joe Burrow every single year, kind of hitting the shelf and not being able to perform at a high level in prime time. So it's just look, the Angels were always going to be sliding backwards regardless of this. And, the conversation isn't so much about Mike Trout and his career going forward. It's when the hell is he going to get off this team? And for some reason, people are blaming the team for his injuries. I don't know if that's fair, but the whole package now of Mike Trout over the past 5 seasons or so has just been unbelievably disappointing. And I hope that there's a way to salvage this somehow, but he's almost 33 years old, and that's generally not a good sign to reinvigorate a Major League Baseball career for the next 5 seasons.
So you said out for the year. Is that the typical length for an injury? Yeah. Torn meniscus sounds like a pretty serious one, but the Angels haven't come out and said that from what I've seen. They haven't,
but the powers that be that I follow have said season ending. So I'm gonna believe them. Yeah. And by the way, I don't know why the Angels would try to rush him back for a team that's going to win 45 games this year.
Yikes, what a mess. 4 players have been suspended in their role in a Rays-Brewers brawl. How much do guys stand to lose when they start swinging at each other? And the manager also suspended for the Milwaukee Brewers.
Yeah, look, this is there were some significant suspensions standard out here. I believe the one player got 6. Freddie Peralta, a starting pitcher, got 5. He's the one that stands to lose the most. I believe it's about $150,000 that he'll lose for that 5-game suspension. But generally speaking, it's in the 20s and 30s for the 3 to 5 game suspensions because it's such a long season. It's paid out over 186 days. So it's not too much of a hit on their pocketbooks. And quite frankly, it's kind of good for baseball when these things happen because it gets, the headlines of highlight reels and things like that. But I'm not saying I'm promoting this in baseball. I'm just saying, every once in a while, it's a long season. Let's get some action in there.
Yeah, it's a hockey fight. Come on.
Yeah.
So Peralta's getting suspended 5 days. That's just for plunking Siri. That's it.
Yeah, that was the retaliation. I believe Uribe got 6 games and Siri got 3, and then the coach got 3, I believe, as well. So everybody involved.
That's how it starts, right? That's games.
That's the funny thing about it.
It's one game.
One start for Peralta. Yeah, if you're thinking about it that way. It's funny.
Stephen Ross received a $10 billion offer from somebody, not me, not Mike, for the Miami Dolphins and the Formula One track that they've got down there in Miami. The Commanders, by the way, went for 6. Yeah. So is this the new going rate or is I guess Formula One's worth quite a bit, but your thoughts on that? A $10 billion offer that was turned down, by the way.
Yeah, I would say that the Formula One part of this is about 33%, right? So the NFL part's about 2/3. Does that mean the Dolphins are now worth $6.5 billion to some degree?
Probably.
I don't think that's inconceivable, right? I believe we were at a point where the Cowboys were approaching 10 million at one point in time, and the Yankees are certainly there as well. This is just where we are. Okay. Yeah. I believe the Cowboys were 9.2 billion according to Sportico last year. The Dolphins cannot be too far off that, knowing where they are and where they are with their roster and their ability to win a Super Bowl here soon. So I think we're there. I think we're at a point where that's not a crazy offer. And anything, it might be lowballing it from an F1 standpoint, a sport that has just absolutely exploded financially speaking from all angles. So yeah, this is what we're doing. This is why the NBA and TNT and all these conversations are happening right now, because Live sports is where it's at, man.
I think he owns the stadium too. I think that might be part of it.
Right. So concerts and all sorts of things. There's a hell of a lot thrown in there. You're right.
Ezekiel Elliott is a Cowboy once again. What does that deal look like? And what do you think about the reunion?
I shouldn't be surprised because this is a running back and a former Cowboy and Jerry Jones. That's the equation we're dealing with here. But he did not get a minimum contract. All right. He got $1.6 million guaranteed, a $2 million base value, and he can get it up to $3 million with some incentives. That's insane for a May running back contract. It's just insane, right? Every other running back who signs from here out is getting $1 million or less. That's just what's going to happen, but not Dallas. Dallas needed a running back. They wanted to bring back an old friend, and they gave him probably double what he was worth to any other team this year.
Their depth chart, by the way, is terrible at that position. This is a team, they've had a great running back for as long as I can remember. I know, and maybe there was I don't even know if there was much of a gap between Emmitt Smith. Like it was Marion Barber, DeMarco Murray, Tony Pollard, Ezekiel Elliott, all the years that he had.
Is this them just saying, we're going to have Dak for one more year? We now know that. We're going to run him into the freaking ground.
Absolutely.
They're going to let him try to be a free agent. Yeah.
He's throwing the ball 50 times a game. They have Zeke, Rico Dowdle, and Deuce Vaughn as their wide receivers, or running backs, rather. So there you go. Check me out on Twitter at Brandon Kravitz for all of my daily content. Also, if you need a podcast assist or audio production of any kind, I can be your guy there. Hit rate, subscribe to this podcast, spottrack.com. Also for all of the latest in the sports and contractual world. Mike, always a pleasure. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, my friend.
Go Magic, sir.
Yes, sir.